that schools, people, children got the measles, would we then be liable for?
There could be some potential liability, there's no specific penalties, but it could open the district up to civil liability if you had a pattern of not complying with the law. If you analogize it to, not stopping at a red light, and you go through the red light and you get into an accident, you violated the law, so that if an accident results, there's liability. So if you don't comply with this law, and somebody's injured as a result, and they can prove it, then there's potential liability.
Ma'am?
And I have a couple of questions that are legal questions that I'd like to ask, and I've copied them, so if you can't answer them, that's fine, you can answer them.
Yeah, I mean, this is a relatively new area, so I may not be able to answer all your questions, but I'll
My
try.
first one is, can the district disclose to the parents of other students and the teacher if a student has not been vaccinated? I know the HIPAA law, you can't say who it is. However, can they be notified that there are students in the classroom?
I
If
think
you want a lawsuit.
that information is considered confidential, so I don't think we can notify parents that somebody hasn't.
But as long as you don't use the name.
I don't think so, but I can
Look into
research
it,
it.
because that's something that came up. Does the district become liable if an unvaccinated student in a class contracts a disease from another student?
I would say possibly, we'd have.
Well, this is
Unless
the
there's an
context,
exemption.
it's the context with an exemption or not.
If they have an exemption, that's the risk.
And will parents be able to request that a student be moved to another class because of the presence? But if that ties into my first question, we can get to that later. Is there civil liability if one student contracts a disease from another? And then my concern is about teachers and their vaccination. I've got a question about that you can look into. Say we have a teacher in a classroom who's pregnant and a child hasn't been vaccinated. Do they have the right to be aware of that?
No.
Okay, I got the list here.
Okay, so,
You don't
if
need
you
to
could send,
respond
okay,
tonight.
great. Yeah, if you could send them to me, I'll be glad to research it.
But some of what you're talking about already is part of the whole issue with vaccinations. All that's changing by the law is how you will become exempt from vaccinations. And so there's already been exempt students within our schools, and they've been in the schools for a long time. So the only change now is who is now exempt from vaccinations, and it moves from you for religious and personal beliefs stating you want it to you having a doctor's note. That's the only change. Otherwise, all of this has existed. I mean, that's why.
But we're gonna see it a little bit more widespread, so I wanna know where we're.
But I think it's already probably in law somewhere, and
We're gonna see what.
So
We
anyway,
can research it.
thank you.
Oh, yes, we do. Yes. Okay, Leah is up next, and then behind her is Dora Ramirez.
Hello, Leah Wissing, Fullerton residents. I do have an 8-year-old, or he's 9 now. He just had a birthday. A 9-year-old son, 3rd grade at Laguna Road, and I have a 5-year-old daughter, also at Laguna Road, who's a kindergartner. I am not anti-vaccine or whatever. I mean, my kids, I have their vaccinations here, records here. We've done a modified schedule, but they're fully vaccinated. So I just wanted to let you know, it's kind of coming from like a different perspective. I will be filling out personal belief exemption forms, even though my 2 kids are fully vaccinated into our school, to have that on record. Unfortunately, I also have a 2-year-old daughter who can't go to TK, who can't go to anything right now. And so I'm looking at homeschooling her, and she won't have the same type of educational opportunities as my 2 other kids will. Because I don't feel right at this point, continuing on with certain things, with certain vaccinations. And that's my choice, and that should be my choice as her parent. So I wanted just to discuss about the personal belief exemption. These kids pose no threat to our public schools at all. And if you accept the concept of herd immunity, then we are more than covered, because Orange County has a vaccination rate of about 95%. There's no reason to fear these children and ostracize them and create unnecessary panic among other students or families or parents. And even then, vaccines have an established fail rate, so 100% compliance would not fully protect the school. IEP kids are not required to be fully vaccinated, and unvaccinated children come to school with their parents to drop off siblings and attend events. Parents and caregivers are not required to be up to date on their vaccinations. I don't know about you, but I don't remember my last vaccination. Okay, I'm not passing around diseases to my kids or to the public. And teachers and staff are currently not required to be fully up to date either. There have been no outbreaks in California schools. I mean, this episode at Disneyland happened at Disneyland. It did not happen at Laguna Road. It did not happen at Troy or Fullerton High School. Some kids are missing one vaccination, like my daughter. Well, it was a mistake. She wasn't actually missing, it was a clerical error. And based on her just missing just one dose, would be excluded from school. And what threat would she have posed to other kids by missing one dose? What threat? So I just wanted to say that bottom line, vaccinated and unvaccinated kids will always commingle, there will always be play dates, there will always be Disneyland or trips or whatever. And to just exclude the one gathering place as being school does not make sense to me. Thank you.
Good evening, board. My name is Dora, and I have 3 kids. I have a 20-year-old, I have a 15-year-old, and I have a 5-year-old. So my 5-year-old is not vaccinated because I have an autoimmune disease, and it's not that easy to get a medical exemption. I've been with my doctor for the 20 years that I've had my adult son. She's not willing to give me one because of the climate of the law. So I just wanted to leave that there. Also, I do have a book, and it's called The Vaccine Whistleblower. So in August of last year, CDC whistleblower came forward, and Dr. Thompson, who is still employed at the CDC under protection of the Federal Whistleblower Protection Act, discloses a pattern of data manipulation, fraud, and corruption at the highest levels of the CDC, the federal agency in charge of protecting the health of Americans. Thompson states senior people just do completely unethical things, vile things, and no one holds them accountable. This book nullifies the government's claim that vaccines are safe and effective, and reveals that the government rigged research to cover up the link between vaccines and autism. Scientific truth and the health of American children have been compromised to protect the vaccine program and the pharmaceutical industry. Now, I want to remind you that you did take an oath, and that is to protect from enemies, foreign and domestic. And I really feel that we're fighting a domestic enemy, which is the pharmaceutical company. If you guys take the time, you will find the research, and you'll realize why some of us are not willing to continue vaccinating our children. I'm going to gift you this book, and I hope that really each and every one of you reads it, because this bill should have never passed with this information. Thank you.
We're parents who want to give you an idea, oh, my name is Susan Moore, sorry, of why we are choosing alternative vaccination schedules for our children. And most of us, as some of the other parents have said, aren't aimlessly following a B-list celebrity or some debunked medical study. Most of us have really principled reasons for our decisions. And those decisions are based in logic, ethics, morality. Some of us feel like, vaccines are a medical procedure. They require informed consent. When you go to the doctor, you have to sign a form saying you understand the risks and benefits. To require require that for school means the government takes away your informed consent. If you choose to keep your informed consent, your only choice is to homeschool your child in this instance. That's pretty serious if we're allowing the government the right to make informed consent in a medical situation. So some people really object to that. Some of us have ethical objections to vaccines. There are vaccines cultured in aborted fetal cell lines. That's true. This whole business about Planned Parenthood and those organs from aborted babies, those are going straight to medical need research. Make no mistake about that. And there are new fetal lines being developed for all those almost 300 vaccines in development. Some people, like myself, my son doesn't have his hepatitis B vaccination. You get hepatitis B through sex and drug paraphernalia. And I hope that there's no sex and drug parties going on in preschool. But under this law, he needs that vaccine to go to preschool. And children with hepatitis B, as I'm sure you all know, can go to school anonymously because it's not communicated in the school. It's silly to require the vaccine for children to go to school. And then you've heard from parents tonight whose children have vaccine injuries, and unlike your lawyer suggests, the law makes it seem very simple. Governor Brown said he approved the law because children can have medical exemptions, but they are very, very hard to get. Children who have documented vaccine reactions cannot get them from doctors. Even some doctors are refusing to even sign the personal belief exemption form, which the law clearly allows. So it's not as simple or as easy as it sounds. And I would ask you, if this was your reason for not vaccinating your child, if they had a reaction and the doctor wouldn't give you an exemption, would you vaccinate them anyway just because a legislator said you had to for your kid to go to school? In Orange County, almost 30,000 people signed the referendum to repeal SB 277. And I personally collected almost 1,000 of those signatures. I trained many of our volunteers, and every single parent who signed the petitions for me said unequivocally that in the circumstances this law remains in effect, they're going to homeschool their kids or leave California. And almost 25,000 public school kids in Orange County have exemptions on file, but that's less than 5% of the over 500,000 kids who go to school here. We have over 95% vaccination rates. If you believe in herd immunity, then you know that this handful of children without vaccine exemptions is not going to be spread wildly infectious disease among our schools. So I hope you can see this as a really nuanced situation. It's implied that it's very simple, but as your legal counsel mentioned, there's nothing written in the law about enforcement. The law says very clearly children with IEPs cannot be excluded from their services, but he's saying that they're not excluded from the law. So which one is it? The law doesn't say. It just says they can't be excluded. So we're here tonight because we're grateful for your phone message and email to us about filing the exemptions, but it's really insufficient. There's only a week left till schools close for winter break. It's not enough time for families to get an appointment with the doctor and get that exemption filed. We think it's your duty, as you're representing both us and the legal responsibility of the district. You're going to open yourself up to lawsuits because it isn't clear in the law how this bill will be enforced. And when children are denied school next fall, that's when the lawsuits are going to start. So we would like to respectfully ask you to request from the State Board of Education and the County Board of Education an extension of the PBE deadline to July 31st, 2016, which is when the law goes into effect, so that parents, the state can inform you how to enforce the law, and you can inform the schools, and they can give correct information to the families so that they can express their legal rights and you can be protected legally for giving correct information to the families.
Your request at the end of your very well-executed set of comments is that we ask the state and local governments to extend the waiver.
Absolutely. The way it's written in the law is that if a family files a personal belief or religious exemption by December 31st of this year, that their child, as you know, will be grandfathered in until the next grade span starts. We already talked about that. But the law doesn't go in effect until July 1st of 2016. It's a kind of a weird thing why the deadline would be now, but the law doesn't go into effect until the summer. So we're just asking you to extend request. We know you can't do it, right? We know you have to comply with the law. But we would like you to request the county and the State Board of Education to simply extend that PBE deadline until July 1st, which is when the law goes into effect. Then the state can tell you how to implement it. They can get their act together. We can fill in all these gray areas in the law. And you can inform families correctly. Your schools were telling families at the beginning of September that the law went into effect this year. That's not true. So you open yourselves up to some really serious legal consequences if your schools are giving families misinformation and then they can't execute their legal rights based on that misinformation. So we just want all these dots to be, Ts to be crossed, Is to be dotted, and the lines to be brought into alignment so that families, and everyone is abiding by this law legally. So it makes sense to push that PBE deadline back to July 1st. Then it's all synced up, they give you the information, you give it to us, everybody's on the same page, we all go forward.
Zoe Johnson. Thank you very much. The good thing about kind of being last is that all these points have been covered, so I don't have to repeat. And I'm a resident of Fullerton, and I have 4 kids, 2 granddaughters here. But I wanted to say, we all talk about, and especially the home dentist or health professional, this informed consent. Informed consent, I think we're being complicit about it because even when we go to the doctor's office and some vaccinations, they just quickly have you almost as they're giving your child the vaccination, sign this and this, but they don't really give you full informed consent. They don't tell you the consequences. They don't give you a whole things ahead of time they don't give you a balanced perspective. And I think that, I know it's not within your scope, but I think that because we have a moral responsibility to advocate for our children, not only as parents, but as educators and medical professionals. And we realizing that the pharmaceuticals, that they cannot be sued, and there has been so many injuries. Vaccine, over $3 billion has been paid out, but yet they can't be sued. Now I know that there is on the federal level, HR 2232, which is a national version of this SB 277, and basically it's going to give a blanket vaccination to all the students that are enrolled to be mandated to be vaccinated. Can we not see what's going on? They're taking our rights little by little. A medical procedure, they're mandating it without the parents' approval, and you and being in the positions that you're in and the roles that's very important, we're being complicit if we don't stop and call attention to what's going on. So we know it's all tied into the money, like Common Core. It's like if you don't go with the program, then you don't get your federal money. But our kids' health, our future, our posterity, we have to think about those. So thank you very much for putting the time aside and listening to us. Thank you.
Hello everybody, Dr. Rod Klopfer, I'm a chiropractor here in Fullerton. And I just want to speak to some of the points that were made earlier. I work with a medical doctor. You cannot get in to see him this month. You will have to see him next month. I can get in to see him, but a lot of people can't. It's really challenging for people, and I know you guys can't change this law, but I think a big question a lot of us have is how can we help you? How can we follow this law and still be compliant with what we believe and what we understand? When I first heard about not vaccinating my child, I thought it was the craziest thing I'd ever heard of. At the time I was in school, so I had access to a medical library. When I went in that medical library, it blew my mind. The first thing I read was no liability. They cannot be sued, and it really changed my perspective. From then I went on to start reading more and more of the journals, not what you read in the newspaper, that's the press release of the journal article. The actual journal article, when you read that stuff, you see that there are statistics in there that make you scratch your head and go, wait a minute, I'm a little scared of this. So because of that, I do not have vaccine-injured children. I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. The 12-year-old's at Ladera Vista, and the 10-year-old's at Acacia. Some of the questions I have are in realms of licensed physician. Is that a California licensed physician, or because a lot of the physicians I have talked to are afraid to write medical exemptions for this due to the fact that they will be reviewed by their medical board. And I know that's true because I do reviews for the chiropractic board. You will be under scrutiny if you dare to challenge this as a medical provider. So those are some of the challenges we're facing, those of us that are choosing not to inoculate our children. So thank you for your time. Oh, Chris, there was one thing, not in their best interest. I think if you wrote it more like, in my medical opinion, it's not in their best interest to have vaccines. I think you cover a little more ground with that. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify one thing. You have until January 1st, is my understanding, to obtain a, to file with us the religious belief and personal beliefs. If you have it on file, you are fine until your child switches up to 7th grade. Otherwise, there's no need to rush to make an appointment with the doctor, because that notice is not needed till January 2nd. And only then would you need it if you don't already have your personal belief on file. And then you won't need it until your child goes into 7th grade. So just to, oh, I'm done, okay. But I just want to clarify, there isn't a need within the next 3 weeks to get to a doctor. The need for the doctor is if you're going into 7th grade or entering kindergarten. Otherwise, if you already have a personal belief on file, you are fine until you switch to 7th grade.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, but a lot of the schools told parents at the beginning of the year that the law already went into effect and they didn't have the right to file an exemption any longer. So it would be really helpful
But
if
I
those
think we've
schools
done lots of
had that correct
information
information.
updates to them since the first of the year.
Can we make sure that all offices are fully aware
Yes,
to accept these?
Yeah, we've talked about it at principals meetings, we've sent out a Connect Ed, we've sent out email, it's on the front website. In fact,
Do we have any knowledge of any of our offices in error telling any parents that they couldn't accept these any longer?
No.
I don't know of anything, I'm sure that
I mean, even historically.
maybe there's somebody that has, but what we have right now is you don't even have to go to the school office, they can download the form directly from the website and
But
simply
it
enter it.
stands to reason they're gonna go to the office. And it's also not, it's not the crime of the century that somebody at the office would misinterpret the law.
Sure.
If you have any trouble with anything, just give me a call, make sure that your phone gets answered, and yours.
And I did check the website, I believe it's the wrong form, is it there? It's
Yeah,
correct?
I have
two
Oh,
separate
thank you.
forms, actually, one that was given to me
We'll take either one.
so you'll take
Okay.
either one?
Yes.
Okay.
Like I said, it just needs to be, that's the form that needs to be on file, everyone has until January 1st. After that, you may have trouble finding a doctor, but that would be only if your child's enrolling into kindergarten, which is probably why the January 1st deadline, because enrollment will begin in the spring, and then the transfer into 7th grade.
How many personal exemptions have we received in the last few months?
I think, typically we're at about 5% for the district.
I mean, has there been a rush on personal exemptions?
Exact numbers, I don't have that data.
We were less than that when this first came, when we were first talking about it last year, we were less than 5%.
Yeah.
We were like at 2.8.
Junior high has a 1.9% and elementary school I think is around 3.5%.
It's low.
It's low.
I'd just like to say to the parents that are upset about this, I'm just sorry. My kids are through school now, and I don't have to answer this question anymore, but, the prior law clearly worked. And this whole thing was a reaction to that Disneyland debacle, and it was just a complete and total overreaction fueled by talk radio and everything else, and it's, I don't know whether these vaccines hurt anybody. I don't know, but what I know is we were not having a significant number of infectious diseases being transmitted at our schools with the 5% of people that chose to get the personal exemption. And it was a win-win, because 95% of the people got inoculated, and if one assumes they're effective, that seemed to be effective enough. And in that case, the only people running the risk are the parents of the children that aren't getting the vaccinations. And it's so absurd, because the teachers don't have to have it, and the parents that volunteer in the classroom don't have to have it, and this is just a big game. But I've said to several of you that I've talked to, I don't really see a way for us to win this for you. You know, I mean, I don't know what, you know, other than accepting any letter that we get from a doctor, which my suspicion is, you know, if the doctor has the courage to put in writing, this is, you know, it sounds like you're gonna have a hard time getting a doctor to put that in writing.
If you could just ask the state to extend the deadline though, till the actual start of the law, that would allow for all these families, like you.
With the state recall.
Ron, can you?
Well, I will
Ma'am, like you said, the families who already have one, like mine's on file, I don't have to worry, but there are lots of parents who just simply don't know.
Yeah, but this is like.
So let's have Ron speak to that waiver
Well, we
extension.
could ask the legislature to extend it to July 1st.
Yes, and the State Board of Education to request the legislature, that's what we're asking, so the families know.
You know, I mean, we can make the request on behalf of the district if the board wants to do that, so it should be considered.
Do we see any downside in doing that?
Is there any downside to doing that?
The law still goes into
Yeah,
effect
we-
on the same date.
Well, except there's no action.
No action on this, we have no action
I
on
mean,
it.
I put on the agenda for the next board meeting.
January.
Yeah.
January.
Do we, is there any
take action.
objection to putting it on the next agenda?
You can make a motion to put it on.
But I'd
move
like
that
to
we
learn more
agendize
about
that
what
on
the
next agenda.
And then if
ramifications
you
are.
would pass a resolution, or, you know, our office can help, you know, write a resolution, or help you write a letter, if that's the board's, you know,
Okay, Lynn can
direction.
get it on the
We'll
agenda.
put
Lynn will get
we'll
it.
ask for a resolution to be sent to the State Board of Education.
There you go.
And maybe you could give us a little additional information of what the pluses and minuses of the extension are. So we're better.
Well,
Yeah.
that would hopefully through the Orange County of Ed would.
Matching the
Well, it
law
will give
date
us time
doesn't
to
make a
verify the
difference,
gray
that's the
area.
point.
It makes a difference to the parents.
No, that's what I was trying to say. Having the law date match the exemption date makes the most sense.
Right, right.
Thank you, Chris.
So let's look into that.
Okay,
Chris, can I mention one thing real quick, because I haven't heard it mentioned here tonight?
She's the president.
I'm sorry. The school nurse is able
You
to
can say what you
sign,
want as far as I'm concerned.
the school nurse is able to sign a personal beliefs exemption. I don't believe that most people are aware of that under AB 2109. So if you could put that on your website, if parents can't get a doctor's appointment or don't have the money or the resources to see a doctor, to make the school nurse available to sign the personal beliefs exemption per AB
Does it have to be signed
2109.
by a
Does it have
medical
to be signed by a
No, a school nurse
It's
is able to.
actually an MD, a DO, a nurse practitioner, a physician's assistant,
Or a
a
school nurse.
naturopathic doctor, or a credentialed.
But is that for a medical exemption?
No, this is for the personal belief
For
exemption.
personal belief, oh.
And it does say a credentialed school nurse,
Yes.
that's what we have for.
Yeah, that would be great if you could let people know that.
Can we get that on the website, or who can sign these documents?
And also,
It's on the document.
It's actually on
Well, it's
the,
awfully,
nurses refuse to sign them sometimes though, and doctors do too, so if the nurses know
well, I'm
that
sure
they
you can
can't.
find
When you
it.
bring it to the district office.
And that's almost, yeah.
can I ask one more question? I'm sorry. So for the medical exemption, that is the gray area as well. So, you know, if it's a, you know, an MD, it's not really stated in the law if it's an MD. Because for a personal belief exemption, you can see all the different people that can sign this personal belief exemption, but this is not clarified. This law is very poorly written. So in that section, it doesn't really specify what type of doctor,
So
whether
get
it's
a
an MD or
doctor
a
of chiropractic
DO
to
or
sign
a
it and turn it in and see what
naturopathic.
happens.
So maybe that would be another
Yeah.
area.
Yeah, there's one, there's a lot of vagueness in the law, I wouldn't
Yes.
disagree with that.
Maybe that's something that could be included in the resolution as clarification on medical
I
exemption.
think you'd be making a mistake putting that on your resolution.
What?
That they wouldn't have.
You want that thing as simple and lean as possible.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you for your
Any
flexibility.
other questions?
Thank you.
Tomorrow, Lee?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Gave you some homework.
Thank you for providing information.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm really grateful.
Yeah, the lovely lady who was seated right in front of us.
Yeah, Darlene.
Yes, she needs to remember her child is 3 years out of school, and laws change, leaving her child behind and all of that, and
Well, I have
she has to.
I have a child in TK at Richmond, and then I have a 1-year-old, so let's hope.
You've got 4 years.
Okay, moving on to our next item on the